mixed with aged whiskey and something darker I couldn't quite place. Danger, maybe. Or money. In my 3 years at Marcello's, I'd learned they often smelled the same. I was wiping down table 7 when he walked in, and I swear the temperature in the dining room dropped 5 degrees. The kind of entrance that makes conversations pause mid-sentence, that makes even the sommelier straighten his tie without thinking about it. He was young, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair swept back from a face all sharp angles and shadows. Tall enough that he had to duck slightly through the doorway. The charcoal suit he wore probably cost more than my yearly rent, tailored so perfectly it moved with him like a second skin. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Ice gray, almost colorless in Marcello's dim lighting. The kind of eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. Sophia. Tommy's voice cracked slightly as he appeared at my elbow. Table 12, your section. I glanced at the reservation book he clutched like a lifeline. Alessandro Gallo, party of 6. No special notes, but Tommy's hands were shaking. Problem? I asked, already knowing the answer. Just. He swallowed hard. Be perfect. Whatever they want, whatever they need. No mistakes. Great. Another power player who thought his black card made him royalty. I'd dealt with worse. I grabbed menus and made my way to table 12, where Gallo now sat surrounded by 5 men in equally expensive suits. They all stood when I approached. Old world manners that somehow felt more threatening than polite. Good evening, gentlemen. I distributed menus with practiced efficiency. Can I start you with something to drink? Bourbon. Gallo's voice was low, accented. Italian, I thought, with an edge of gravel that sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. Pappy Van Winkle, if you have it. Of course he'd order the $500 bottle. We do. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Neat, or on ice? His eyes lifted to mine, and the impact of that colorless gaze was like a physical touch. Neat. And bring the bottle. The other men ordered. Wine, scotch, more bourbon. But I barely heard them. I could feel Gallo's attention on me like heat from a flame, tracking my movements as I noted their orders. I'll be right back with your drinks, I said, turning to leave. Sophia. My name in his mouth stopped me cold. I hadn't introduced myself. The name tag, I realized. But hearing him say it felt intimate in a way that made my pulse quicken. Yes? Your hands are shaking. I looked down. Damn it. He was right. 14-hour shift, I said, forcing my voice steady. Nothing coffee won't fix. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. You should take better care of yourself. The words should have sounded concerned. Instead, they sounded like an order. I'll keep that in mind. I met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated. Your drinks will be right out. As I walked away, I felt his eyes follow me across the dining room. The rest of the evening was a masterclass in passive-aggressive torture. They ordered the tasting menu, 12 courses, each more complicated than the last. Gallo sent back 3 dishes, never with a specific complaint, just a slight shake of his head, and those ice-chip eyes fixing on me like I'd personally failed him. The chef would like to know what was wrong with the osso buco, I said on the 3rd return trip to the kitchen, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Tell your chef, Gallo said, his accent thickening slightly, that if he cannot distinguish between osso buco and dog food, perhaps he should find another profession. The men at his table laughed. That uncomfortable, sycophantic sound of people who laugh because they're supposed to, not because anything is funny. My face burned, but I kept my expression blank. I'll prepare another dish immediately. Don't bother. He waved his hand in dismissal. Bring the check. I wanted to tell him that Marcello's had 2 Michelin stars and a 3-month waiting list, that Chef Andre had trained under masters in Italy, that his osso buco had been perfect, and the problem was clearly his own pretentious palate. Instead, I nodded. Right away, sir. 10 minutes later, I returned with the leather folder containing their check. 3,247. Gallo didn't even glance at it. He slid a black American Express across the white linen tablecloth with the casual indifference of someone for whom money held no meaning. I processed the payment, returned the receipt for signing, and waited. He scrawled an illegible signature, closed the folder, and stood. His companions rose with him like an honor guard, buttoning their jackets in synchronized movements. That's when I saw it. On the pristine white tablecloth, deliberately placed in the center of the half-eaten ossobuco he'd declared inedible, sat a single dollar bill. $1. Not crumpled. Not an oversight. Crisp and fresh. Positioned with the same care someone might use to place a rose on a grave. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was calculated. A message. Around me, the other servers had noticed. Maria shot me a sympathetic look. David shook his head. Even Tommy, watching from the kitchen doorway, looked uncomfortable. Have a pleasant evening. Gallo's voice cut through the sudden quiet, not even glancing my way as he passed. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, internal breaking, like the last thread holding together fabric that's been fraying for years. I grabbed the dollar bill, smoothed it flat against my palm, and walked across the dining room in long, deliberate strides. My heart hammered against my ribs, adrenaline flooding my system with a clarity that made everything sharp and bright. Mr. Gallo. My voice carried across the restaurant, cutting through the murmur of conversations. The entire dining room went silent. He turned slowly, one eyebrow raised in that perfect arch of surprise and annoyance. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd thought. Maybe 35, with olive skin and a small scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Handsome in the way predators are handsome, beautiful in their danger. This fell. I held out the dollar bill, my hand remarkably steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. You dropped it. His eyes, God, those eyes, studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. That's your tip? No. I kept the bill extended, my voice clear and unwavering. This will serve you better than it will serve me. My dignity doesn't have a price. The silence was absolute. 50 people holding their collective breath. One of his men moved forward, younger, with a tattoo creeping up from his collar, but Gallo stopped him with a gesture so slight I almost missed it. What's your name? He asked, his voice softer now. Curious. Sophia Romano. Sophia Romano. He repeated it like he was tasting the syllables, committing them to memory. Then he reached out and took the dollar from my hand, his fingers brushing mine for just a second. The contact sent a jolt through me, electric, unexpected, entirely unwelcome. Interesting, he murmured, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he turned and walked out into the November night, his men following like shadows. I stood frozen in the middle of the dining room, trembling from adrenaline, as reality crashed over me in waves. I'd just publicly humiliated one of Marcello's most important customers. I was so fired. My office. Now. Tommy's face was the color of a fire hydrant as he grabbed my arm and practically dragged me toward the back of the restaurant. The other servers scattered like roaches when lights turn on. His office was barely larger than a closet, smelling of mildew and old takeout containers. I stood in front of his desk, arms crossed, waiting for the inevitable. What the hell were you thinking? He was practically vibrating with rage. Do you have any idea who that was? A customer who left me a dollar tip after spending almost $4,000. My voice came out calmer than I felt. And who insulted me, the chef, and this restaurant? That was Alessandro Gallo. Tommy ran his hands through his thinning hair, making it stand at wild angles. He owns half the restaurants in this city. The name rang a distant bell, the way powerful New York names always did. Should I be impressed? You should be terrified. He collapsed into his chair like someone had cut his strings. He's not just rich, Sophia, he's. He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. He's connected. Powerful. The kind of man you don't insult and walk away from. Well, I just did. Tommy looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Gather your things. I'll pay you for tonight's shift, but that's it. I'm sorry, but I can't protect you from this. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. I understand. 15 minutes later, I stood on the street with my gym bag and 186 in tips. Not enough for rent. Not even close. It was raining because of course it was raining. Because when your life falls apart, the universe always adds dramatic weather. I started walking toward the subway, my mind already racing through options. I had maybe 2 weeks of savings if I was careful. 3 if I skipped meals and walked everywhere. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lucia. Hey sis, still at work? Her voice was bright, oblivious. I got fired, I heard myself say. I gave back a $1 tip to an arrogant customer and got fired for it. Silence. Then, get over here, now. That's not a question. An hour later, I was sitting in Lucia's tiny queen's kitchen with a bowl of pasta and a glass of wine I desperately needed. So let me get this straight, Marco said, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. This guy spent almost 4 grand, complained about everything, and then left you $1? $1. I took a long sip of wine, deliberately placed for maximum humiliation. And you gave it back to him. I told him it would serve him better than me. Marco let out a low whistle. That takes guts. It takes unemployment, Lucia muttered. But there was pride in her voice. Though, Soph. Alessandro Gallo? Really? I looked up sharply. You know who he is? Lucia and Marco exchanged one of those married couple looks that communicate entire conversations. Everyone knows who he is, Lucia said carefully. The Gallo family has been in New York since the 20s. They're. She paused, choosing her words. Complicated. Complicated how? Let's just say they have business interests that aren't all entirely legal, Marco said. And Alessandro, they say he took over the family business young, maybe 20, built it into something bigger than his father ever dreamed. A chill settled in my stomach. So he's. Nobody says the word out loud, Marco interrupted. But yeah, he's exactly what you're thinking, and you just gave him his money back to his face. I set down my wine glass carefully. Great. So I'm not just unemployed. I'm on a mob boss's bad side. Not necessarily, Lucia said quickly. I mean, if he wanted to do something, he would have already done it, right? It wasn't as comforting as she probably intended. I stayed that night on Lucia's couch, sleeping badly, dreaming of ice gray eyes and dollar bills that multiplied until I was drowning in them. I didn't sleep. How could I, when my mind kept replaying those ice gray eyes, the way his fingers had brushed mine, the electric shock of that brief contact? By the time dawn broke over Queens, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined the intensity. He was just another arrogant rich guy. The fact that he was younger than I'd expected, that his voice had sent shivers down my spine, that his touch had. No, I wasn't going there. I had bigger problems. Like the 1,140 setters I owed in rent in 5 days. Like the empty job listings on my laptop. Like the sinking realization that being blackballed by Alessandro Gallo probably meant every decent restaurant in Manhattan would slam their doors in my face. My phone buzzed at 8 a.m. Unknown number. Hello? My voice was scratchy with exhaustion. Sophia Romano? A man's voice. Professional. Unfamiliar. My heart kicked against my ribs. Who is this? My name is Vincent. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Gallo. The room tilted slightly. I don't know any Mr. Gallo. A pause. You treated him quite memorably last night at Marcello's. He would like to meet with you. Tell Mr. Gallo I'm not interested in meeting. He's prepared to offer substantial compensation for your time. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is this some kind of power play? He gets me fired and now he wants to throw money at me? Mr. Gallo wishes to discuss a business proposition. Are you available this afternoon at 3? Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to block this number and pretend last night had never happened. Instead, I heard myself ask, where? Vincent gave me an address in Tribeca that I recognized as one of the most expensive buildings in the city. 42nd floor. Mr. Gallo will be expecting you. The call ended before I could change my mind. I sat frozen, phone clutched in my hand, wondering what the hell I'd just agreed to. The Tribeca building looked like something out of an architecture magazine. All glass and steel and money, the kind of place where the doorman's uniform probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He looked at me with barely concealed skepticism. Rumpled jeans, cheap blazer from a thrift store, scuffed boots. Until I mentioned 42nd floor, Mr. Gallo. His expression shifted instantly. Respect mixed with something that looked disturbingly like pity. The elevator was nicer than any apartment I'd ever lived in. It rose in complete silence, my reflection staring back at me from mirrored walls. I looked tired, scared, like someone way out of her depth. The doors opened directly into a penthouse that stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked all of Manhattan, the afternoon sun turning the city to gold and glass. The space was enormous, open concept with soaring ceilings, museum-quality art on the walls, furniture that whispered old money rather than screamed new wealth. And standing by those massive windows, looking out at the city like he owned it, was Alessandro Gallo. He'd changed from last night's formal suit into dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casualness should have made him less intimidating. It didn't. If anything, seeing him like this, relaxed, in his own space, was more unsettling. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. The afternoon light caught the sharp planes of his face, the strong line of his jaw, the small scar through his eyebrow. He was, objectively, one of the most beautiful men I'd ever seen, which made him infinitely more dangerous. Sophia Romano. My name in his accented voice sent that same unwelcome shiver down my spine. Thank you for coming. I'm not sure I had much choice. I stayed near the elevator, maintaining distance. Your man made it sound like refusing wasn't really an option. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. There's always a choice. You could have hung up. You didn't. I was curious. Good. Curiosity is useful? He moved away from the windows, and I fought the urge to step back. Would you like something to drink? Coffee? Wine? Answers. I crossed my arms. Why am I here? He studied me for a long moment, those ice-gray eyes dissecting me with unsettling intensity. Because you have something I need. My stomach dropped. I'm not that kind of... Your medical expertise, he interrupted smoothly. And your discretion. I blinked. I'm a waitress. Was a waitress. You were a medical student at Johns Hopkins, top 5% of your class, dropped out in your final year after your fiancé died. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was reading from a file, which he probably was. You completed nursing school at Columbia, currently, formerly, working at Marcello's while paying off $137,000 in student debt. Ice flooded my veins. You investigated me. I investigate everyone who interests me. He moved to a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of what looked like very expensive whiskey. Your grandmother is in assisted living in Baltimore, advancing dementia. You send her $400 every month despite barely making rent. You had no right. Rights. He handed me a glass. An interesting concept. I didn't take it. What do you want from me? Last night was a test, he said, setting the untouched glass on a nearby table. I needed to see how you would react to being deliberately provoked, to being humiliated in front of your colleagues and customers. The words hit like a slap. You got me fired on purpose? I knew your manager would make that choice. Yes. Weak men always do. He took a sip of his own drink. But I'll compensate you. 6 months of your Marcello's salary, plus benefits. Consider it a signing bonus. For what? A position. He set down his glass with deliberate care. I'm opening a new restaurant. Not just any restaurant. The restaurant. 5-star. Exclusive. The kind of place where presidents dine and celebrities beg for reservations. I stared at him. And you want me to… what? Waitress? Manage it. His eyes never left mine. General manager of Vitale. Full operational control. Staff hiring, menu development, vendor relationships. Everything. The world tilted slightly. That's insane. I have no experience. You have something better than experience. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne now. Cedar and something darker. More complex. You have integrity. You stood in front of me, knowing or not knowing who I was, and you gave me my money back because your dignity was worth more than your tip. That kind of principle is rare. In my world, it's invaluable. Your world being complicated. A slight smile. But I think you've already guessed the basics. I had. Marco's warnings, the way people feared him, the casual mention of having me investigated, all pointed to one conclusion. You're telling me I lowered my voice, though we were alone. A criminal wants to hire me to run his restaurant? I'm telling you, a businessman with diverse interests wants to hire someone with the courage to stand up to him. Someone who won't bend when pressured. Someone who knows what she's worth. He was close now. Close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his pupils dilated slightly as he looked at me. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. I need an answer, Sophia. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Will you take the position? Every rational part of my brain screamed no. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. Getting involved with whatever shadowy empire he commanded was a mistake that could ruin my life. But another part, the part that had been slowly dying since James was killed, that had been sleepwalking through a gray half-life for 3 years, whispered yes. Yes to the challenge. Yes to the opportunity. Yes to feeling alive again. I have conditions, I heard myself say. His lips curved. I would expect nothing less. Full transparency about the business. No secrets. If there's something illegal happening, I need to know about it. That knowledge comes with responsibility. With danger. I know. He studied me for another long moment. What else? 6 months trial period. If I hate it or if you decide I'm not what you need, we part ways. No hard feelings, no consequences. Agreed. And the money you mentioned, I want it in writing. Contract, salary, benefits, everything legal and documented. Of course. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Sophia Romano? I looked at his hand. Elegant fingers, neat nails, a gold signet ring on his pinky. The hand of someone who commanded empires and probably ordered deaths with equal ease. I should walk away. Run, actually. Instead, I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine. Warm, strong, sending that same electric current racing up my arm. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, a touch that lasted a fraction too long to be purely professional. When do I start? I asked, my voice not quite steady. His smile was slow, dangerous, beautiful. Right now. Right now meant being led through his penthouse to a home office that was larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, and spread across every available surface were binders, folders, architectural plans. Vitale, he said, gesturing to the controlled chaos. 3 months until opening. Location in the meatpacking district. 60 tables. Capacity for 200 diners. I picked up one of the architectural renderings. The space was stunning. Industrial chic meats, elegant luxury, all exposed brick and custom lighting and an open kitchen where diners could watch their meals being prepared. This is beautiful, I admitted. It will be. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. But only if every detail is perfect. The staff, the menu, the atmosphere. Nothing can be overlooked. And you think I can manage that? I set down the rendering. I've never run anything bigger than my section at Marcello's. You'll learn. He pulled out another folder, this one containing what looked like staff organizational charts. I've arranged for you to spend 2 weeks training with the general manager at my flagship restaurant. You'll shadow her, learn the systems, understand how a high-end operation runs. You have other restaurants? 5 in Manhattan, 2 in Brooklyn, 1 in the Hamptons. He said it casually, like owning 8 restaurants was nothing. But Vitale will be different, special. Why? He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gray eyes made my breath catch. Because it's entirely legitimate. Clean money, transparent operations, above board in every way. A pause. And because I'm entrusting it to you. The weight of that statement hung between us. Mr. Gallo. Alessandro. His voice was soft. When we're alone, call me Alessandro. The intimacy of first names felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. Alessandro, then. I need to be honest with you. I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither did I when I took over my father's business. His expression shadowed briefly. I was 20 years old and everyone expected me to fail. Instead, I built an empire. 20. God. He'd been running a criminal organization since he was barely out of college. How old are you now? The question slipped out before I could stop it. 35. A slight smile. Old enough to know what I want. Young enough to go after it without apology. The way he said it, the way his eyes held mine, made it clear he wasn't just talking about restaurants. Heat crept up my neck. I should go. Start packing for this training you mentioned. Sophia. His hand caught my wrist, fingers circling it completely, warm and sure. One more thing. His touch made my pulse jump. I knew he could feel it, racing beneath his fingertips. What? My voice came out breathier than I intended. The dollar. He reached into his pocket with his free hand, withdrew that crisp bill I'd returned to him. I'm keeping this. A reminder. Of what? His thumb moved slightly against my wrist, tracing the vein there. Of the woman brave enough to tell me no. Before I could respond, he released me and stepped back, the moment breaking like a soap bubble. Vincent will send you all the details for Monday. Training location, schedule, everything you'll need. His voice was professional again, but his eyes still burned with that intensity. Welcome to Vitale, Sophia Romano. I left his penthouse in a daze, my wrist still tingling where he'd touched me. In the elevator, I caught my reflection again. The tired, scared woman from earlier was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone whose eyes were bright with possibility. Someone who just made either the best or worst decision of her life. I wouldn't know which, until it was far too late to turn back. Monday morning, I stood outside Gallo's flagship restaurant, Impero, in Midtown, and tried not to throw up. The building was intimidating. Red brick, brass fixtures, a discreet sign that somehow screamed expensive. Through the windows, I could see staff already moving efficiently through the space, preparing for lunch service. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're standing outside looking terrified. Come in. Back entrance. A. I looked up sharply. The building across the street had floor-to-ceiling windows several floors up. I couldn't see him, but I felt watched. The back entrance led to a kitchen that was like nothing I'd ever seen. Commercial-grade everything, gleaming stainless steel, a brigade of chefs already in full uniform despite the early hour. You must be Sophia. I turned to find a woman in her early 40s, dark hair pulled back severely, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. She extended her hand. Isabella Cruz, general manager of Impero. Alessandro asked me to show you the ropes. Her handshake was firm, assessing. He speaks highly of you. He barely knows me. A smile played at her lips. Alessandro doesn't bring people into the fold lightly. If he's chosen you for Vitale, you must be special. The way she said special made me wonder what exactly Alessandro had told her about me. For the next 12 hours, Isabella put me through a masterclass in high-end restaurant management. We started with the morning prep, checking inventory, reviewing reservations, meeting with the chef about menu changes. Then the staff meeting where Isabella commanded the room with quiet authority that made everyone lean in to hear her. Watch how the floor manager arranges tables, she instructed as lunch service began. See how he's leaving buffer zones between the loud tables and the quiet ones? That's not random. That's orchestration. I took notes on everything. The way they greeted VIP guests, how they handled complaints, rare, and special requests, constant. The coded language the staff used to communicate problems without alarming diners. Reservation systems, vendor, relationships, staff scheduling. It's all about relationships, Isabella said over espresso after the lunch rush. The best managers aren't just good at logistics. They're good at reading people. Like Alessandro? I asked before I could stop myself. Her expression sharpened with interest. He's taught you that already? He read me pretty accurately, yes. Alessandro reads everyone. She set down her cup. It's how he's stayed in power so long. He sees what people need, what they want, what they fear. Then he uses that information. The clinical way she said it sent a chill through me. Are you warning me? I'm telling you what I wish someone had told me when I started working for him. Her gaze was direct. Alessandro Gallo is brilliant, generous to those he values, and absolutely ruthless with anyone who threatens what's his. If you're on his good side, there's nowhere safer. But crossing him? She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. That night, I returned to my apartment exhausted and buzzing with information. My head was full of reservation systems and wine pairings, and the 1,000 details that went into making a service look effortless. I was making notes when my phone rang. Alessandro. How was day one? His voice was warm, relaxed. I wondered if he was still at his office or home in that stunning penthouse. Overwhelming. I collapsed onto my futon. Isabella is terrifying. He laughed. A real laugh, not the carefully controlled sounds I'd heard from him before. She has that effect. But you survived? Barely. I closed my eyes, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt. Talking to him at night, hearing that slight huskiness in his voice. She told me you read people. Did she? Not a question. Is that how you knew? That I'd take the job? A pause. I knew you would take it because you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity. Because you need it. Financially? Yes. But also emotionally. You've been half alive since your fiancé died, Sophia. This is your chance to wake up. The words should have made me angry. Instead, they struck something deep and true. You don't know me well enough to say that. Don't I? His voice dropped lower. I know you're brave. I know you value dignity over comfort. I know you have steady hands even when you're terrified. What else do I need to know? My heart was beating too fast. Why, Vitale? Why create something completely legitimate when you already have whatever else you have? Because my father only knew one way to build power. I want to prove there are others. He paused. And because I needed someone I could trust with something that matters to me. Someone who wouldn't be impressed by my money or intimidated by my reputation. So you tested me. With the dollar. I tested you, he agreed. You passed spectacularly. I should hang up. This conversation was veering into territory that felt dangerous. I should get some sleep, I said. Instead, tomorrow Isabella's teaching me about wine. Sophia. Something in his tone made me still. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. After he hung up, I lay in the darkness, my phone still warm against my ear, wondering what the hell I was getting myself into. 2 weeks of training flew by in a blur of information and exhaustion. Isabella was relentless, brilliant, and occasionally terrifying. She made me role-play difficult customer scenarios until I could handle them in my sleep. She taught me to taste wine properly, to understand the difference between Bordeaux and Burgundy, to read a dining room like a conductor reads an orchestra. You're a natural, she admitted on my last day. Alessandro was right about you. He talks about me? A knowing smile. More than he probably should. On my final evening, I met with the chef who'd be running Vitale's kitchen, a temperamental Frenchman named André, who made it immediately clear he resented taking direction from some American girl. The menu is my domain, he said, his accent thick with disdain. You manage the floor, I manage the food. We collaborate, I corrected, keeping my voice level. Mr. Gallo expects both of us to create something exceptional. That requires partnership, not territorial warfare. He stared at me, clearly unused to being challenged. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Perhaps you have spine after all. D'accord. We try this partnership. When I reported the interaction to Alessandro that night, our phone calls had become routine, something I looked forward to more than I wanted to admit. He sounded amused. You stood up to Andre. Impressive. Most people fold. I had a good teacher. I curled up on my futon, phone pressed to my ear. Someone who showed me the value of not backing down. Flattery, Sophia? His voice was warm, teasing. I'm shocked. I'm stating facts. I smiled despite myself. When do I see the actual Vitale space? Tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 9. My heart skipped. You're personally showing me? It's my restaurant. And you're my general manager. Of course I'm showing you personally. The way he said my sent an unwelcome thrill through me. This was professional. A business relationship? Nothing more. So why did I spend an hour the next morning trying on different outfits before settling on dark jeans and a simple sweater? Why did I actually put on makeup for the first time in months? Professional? I reminded myself. This is professional. Then Alessandro's car pulled up, a sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows, and he stepped out to open my door himself, and every rational thought evaporated. He was devastating in a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone, revealing a triangle of olive skin. His dark hair was slightly windblown, his gray eyes hidden behind designer sunglasses. Good morning. He smiled, and I forgot how to breathe. Morning, I managed. The drive to the meatpacking district took 20 minutes. We spent it discussing logistics, opening timeline, staff hiring, marketing strategy, professional topics. But I was hyper aware of his presence in the confined space, the way his hands looked on the steering wheel, the expensive watch on his wrist, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with leather seats. You're quiet, he observed. Just thinking. About? About how dangerous it is that I'm attracted to you. about how every conversation we have feels charged with something I shouldn't acknowledge, about how I'm terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. About Vitale, I lied. His lips curved like he knew exactly what I was really thinking. The restaurant space stole my breath. It was exactly as beautiful as the renderings had promised. Soaring ceilings, exposed brick, massive windows letting in floods of natural light. The open kitchen gleamed with stainless steel. The dining room waited like a blank canvas. "It's perfect," I whispered. Alessandro moved to stand beside me, so close our shoulders almost touched. "It will be, with your help." We spent the next 3 hours walking through every detail: where the host stand should go, how to arrange the bar for optimal flow, the lighting design that would make the space feel intimate despite its size. "The tables here," I pointed to a section near the windows. "We should reserve these for VIPs. Best views, most privacy." Agreed. He made a note on his phone. What else? I walked the space, my mind racing with possibilities. "The kitchen sightline needs adjustment. Diners want to see the action but not be overwhelmed by it. And the acoustics? We'll need sound baffling or conversations will echo." He watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You have good instincts." "I had a good teacher," I said again, then froze as I realized how close he was standing. Close enough that I could see the darker gray ring around his irises. Close enough to count the individual lashes framing those pale eyes. Close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Sophia." My name was barely a whisper. "We should—" My voice cracked. I cleared my throat. "We should discuss the timeline." Something flickered in his expression. Disappointment? But he stepped back, giving me space to breathe. "Of course. Timeline." We moved apart, and I told myself the moment had meant nothing, even though we both knew I was lying. Opening night of Vitale arrived like a storm I'd been watching gather on the horizon for 3 months. The space was perfect. Every table positioned exactly right, every wine glass polished to invisible clarity, every member of my 60-person staff trained until they could execute service in their sleep. I stood in the center of the dining room at 4 p.m., 2 hours before our first reservation, and felt my stomach twist into knots. "You look like you're going to throw up." I turned to find Alessandro leaning against the host stand, devastatingly handsome in a black suit. He'd been in and out all week, overseeing final details, but seeing him now, on opening night, made everything feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. "I might," I admitted. "We have a senator, 2 Michelin-starred chefs, and at least 4 restaurant critics coming tonight. No pressure." He crossed the room in long strides, stopping close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Over the past 3 months, these moments of proximity had become both familiar and dangerous. "You're ready." His hand lifted, and for a heart-stopping second I thought he might touch my face. Instead, he adjusted the collar of my black dress. "You've thought of everything. What if I haven't? Then you improvise." His fingers lingered at my collar a moment too long. "That's what makes you good at this, Sophia. You don't freeze under pressure." The heat of his touch through the thin fabric made my breath catch. 3 months of late-night phone calls, working sessions that stretched past midnight. Moments like this where the air between us crackled with something neither of us acknowledged. 3 months of pretending this was purely professional. "Alessandro," I started. "Mr. Gallo." Andre burst through the kitchen doors, his chef's whites already splattered with sauce. "The foie gras. The supplier. He sends the wrong—" "Fix it," Alessandro said, his eyes never leaving mine. "Sophia will help you find an alternative." It was a test. On opening night, with 2 hours until service, a crisis that could derail everything. I took a breath, pushed aside the confusion his proximity always created, and switched into manager mode. Andre, what did we get instead of the foie gras? Duck liver, common, pedestrian, unacceptable. Can you make a parfait? I cut him off. Something that elevates it? The reservation expecting foie gras isn't until 8:30. We have time. His eyes narrowed, considering. Then, grudgingly, we, perhaps with cognac, with truffles to mask the, not mask, enhance. I moved toward the kitchen. Show me what you're thinking. As I passed Alessandro, his hand caught mine briefly. A squeeze. Reassurance. Something more. See? He murmured. You don't freeze. By 6 p.m., the crisis was solved. Andre had created something that might actually be better than the original plan, a duck liver parfait with cognac and black truffle that melted on the tongue like butter. By 6:30, my staff was in position, floor managers at their stations, sommelier reviewing the wine list one final time, host stand manned by Marcus, whose smile could disarm presidents. By 6:45, I was standing near the kitchen entrance, watching the dining room fill with New York's elite, and wondering if I was going to hyperventilate. Breathe. Alessandro appeared at my elbow, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He'd been greeting guests near the entrance, playing The Gracious Owner, but now he was here. With me. If I start breathing, I'll remember to panic. I took the champagne anyway. To Vitale, he said, raising his glass, and to the woman who made it possible. Our glasses touched with a delicate chime. I sipped, the bubbles sharp and perfect, and watched him over the rim. He was watching me back. You should be out there, I said, schmoozing with senators. I should be wherever I'm most useful. His voice dropped lower. Right now, that's making sure you don't pass out. I'm not going to. A crash from the dining room cut me off. Table 7. A waiter, one of my newer hires, had dropped an entire tray of appetizers. Scallops and microgreens scattered across the floor in a carnage of white porcelain and mortification. Every eye in the restaurant turned. My heart stopped. This was it. Opening night disaster. The story that would make tomorrow's reviews. Vitale opens with literal crash. Then Alessandro did something that changed everything. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, genuine laugh that carried across the dining room with infectious warmth. Well, he called out, his accent thickening slightly with amusement. At least we know the scallops are fresh enough to bounce. The tension shattered. A few guests chuckled. Then more. Within seconds, the entire dining room was laughing with him. I watched, stunned, as he moved smoothly into the space, helping the mortified waiter collect broken porcelain, turning disaster into charming anecdote. No harm, he assured the table, flashing that devastating smile. Your appetizers will be out in 5 minutes. On the house, naturally. And I promise, we'll be more careful with the delivery. By the time he returned to me, the incident was already becoming a funny story instead of a catastrophe. How did you? I started. People forgive mistakes if you handle them with grace. He set down the broken pieces he'd collected. They remember how you made them feel, not what went wrong. I stared at him. This man who commanded criminal empires and ran restaurants with equal skill, who could read a room like a conductor reads a score. Thank you, I said softly. Don't thank me yet. The night's not over. But the night was perfect. Service flowed like water. Andre's food was transcendent. Every plate a work of art that made critics reach for their phones to photograph. The wine pairings were sublime. The atmosphere hummed with the exact energy I'd dreamed of. Elegant but not stuffy. Exclusive but not pretentious. By 10 p.m., I'd stopped holding my breath. By 11 p.m., I was watching the dining room with something close to pride. The senator wants to meet you. I turned to find Alessandro beside me again. He'd been circulating all night, but somehow he always found his way back to me. The senator? He's impressed. Wants to make a standing reservation. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Told you that you were ready. Senator Morrison was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, commanding presence, the kind of handshake that telegraphed power. His wife was elegant in pearls and Chanel. Ms. Romano, this is exceptional. The senator gestured to the dining room. I've eaten at every notable restaurant in this city, and Vitale is already among the best. You're very kind. I'm very honest. He smiled. Alessandro told me you were special. He undersold it. I glanced at Alessandro, who was watching our interaction with barely concealed amusement. I had excellent support, I said carefully. The best teams start with the best leaders. The senator's handshake was firm, final. We'll be back next week, and the week after that. After they left, I turned to Alessandro. You told him I was special? I tell everyone you're special. He said it casually, but something in his tone made my pulse quicken. Because it's true. The last guest departed at 12:30 a.m. By 1:00 the staff had cleaned and reset for tomorrow. By 1:15 it was just Alessandro and me in the empty dining room, 2 glasses of wine between us. We did it, I said, still not quite believing. You did it. He raised his glass. I just wrote the checks. You saved us from the scallop disaster. That was nothing. You handled the foie gras crisis. You managed Andre when he wanted to quit over the wrong pans. You interviewed and trained 60 people in 3 months. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Vitale succeeded because of you, Sophia. The praise shouldn't have meant so much. But from him, it felt like everything. I couldn't have done it without what? He leaned forward, and suddenly the table between us felt both too wide and not nearly wide enough. Without me? You could have. You're brilliant at this. Alessandro, do you know what I thought the first time I saw you? His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Before the dollar? Before I knew anything about you? My heart was pounding. What? I thought. Finally. Someone who looks at me like I'm just a man. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. You're not just a man, I said quietly. You're dangerous, complicated, wrong for you. He finished for me. I know. I've been telling myself the same thing for 3 months. 3 months. The same amount of time I'd been lying to myself about what I felt. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible. He agreed. Neither of us moved. I should go home. But I didn't stand up. You should. But his eyes held mine. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. And I knew, we both knew, we were approaching a line we couldn't uncross. My phone shattered the tension, buzzing loud against the table. Lucia's name flashed on the screen. I answered, grateful and disappointed in equal measure. Hey, Lou. Sophia, it's Nonna. Her voice was tight with tears. She had a stroke. You need to come to Baltimore. Now. The world tilted. Alessandro was already standing, car keys in hand, his expression shifting instantly from intimate to commanding. I'll drive you, he said. It wasn't a question. You don't have to. Sophia. He was already helping me into my coat. I'm driving you. Don't argue. We made it to Baltimore in 3 hours. Alessandro's Mercedes eating up the highway while I sat in the passenger seat, numb with fear. He didn't try to fill the silence with empty reassurances. He just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console where, once, his fingers had briefly covered mine. Nona survived the stroke, but barely. I spent 2 weeks in Baltimore, sleeping in chairs beside her hospital bed, watching machines breathe for her, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Alessandro called every day, not texts, actual phone calls, his voice warm and concerned, asking about Nonna, about me, about nothing in particular. Just there. Vitali is running smoothly, he assured me on day 5, Isabella is covering for you. Don't worry about anything except your grandmother. I should be there. You should be exactly where you are. His tone left no room for argument. Family first. Always. On day 8, flowers arrived. Not a standard hospital bouquet, but Nonna's favorites. Gardenias, their scent filling the sterile room with something sweet and living. The card read simply, Courage. A. Lucia found me crying over them at 2 a.m. He really cares about you, she said softly, settling into the chair beside me. It's professional concern. Soph. She gave me that older sister look. I've seen professional concern. This isn't it. It can't be anything else. I wiped my eyes. You know what he is. What he does. I know what he might be, she corrected. And I know he drove you 3 hours in the middle of the night and calls you every single day. That means something. It meant I was in trouble. Deep, complicated, dangerous trouble. Nonna woke up on day 12, confused, but alive. The doctors said she'd need months of rehabilitation, that she might never fully recover, but she was alive. I called Alessandro from the hospital parking lot, and he answered on the first ring. She's awake, I said, and started crying again. Sophia. His voice was so gentle it broke something in me. I'm glad. So glad. I need to stay another week. Maybe 2. I'm sorry, I know Vitale. Is fine. Stay as long as you need. I'm handling everything. Alessandro. I took a shaky breath. Thank you. For everything. A pause. Come home safe, Sophia. The way he said home made my chest tight. I returned to New York 3 weeks after opening night, exhausted and emotionally wrung out. Vitale had thrived in my absence. The reviews were spectacular. 3 stars from the Times, glowing write-ups in every major publication. We were booked solid for the next 2 months. You built something that runs. Without you, Isabella said when I returned. That's the mark of excellent management. But I knew the truth. Alessandro had been here every day, maintaining standards, ensuring nothing slipped. He'd protected what we'd built, what I'd built, what we'd built together. He was waiting in my office when I arrived on my first day back, sitting at my desk, going through reservation requests, looking up when I entered with those ice-gray eyes that still made my breath catch. Welcome back. He stood, and I noticed he looked tired, like he'd been working too hard. You should have called me if things were overwhelming. They weren't. He moved around the desk. I wanted to be here. I needed to be useful. We stood 2 feet apart, the air between us charged with everything we hadn't said. Thank you, I said quietly, for all of it. The flowers, the calls, keeping Vitale running. Sophia. Whatever he was about to say was cut off by Andre bursting through the door. Ah, you are back. Finally. This one. He jabbed a finger at Alessandro. He is impossible. Changes the menu, argues with my plating, thinks he knows better than a chef with 3 Michelin stars. 2 Michelin stars. Alessandro corrected mildly. And I wasn't changing the menu. I was suggesting improvements. Improvements! Andre threw his hands up. He knows nothing of cuisine. I bit back a smile. I'll handle it, Andre. Give me 5 minutes. The chef stormed out, muttering in French. You changed his menu? I asked Alessandro. I suggested the lamb needed less time. He took it personally. A slight smile. I may have been persistent in my suggestions. You were here every day, weren't you? Not just overseeing, actually working. His expression softened. I told you, I needed to be useful. And this place, he gestured to the office, to Vitale beyond. It matters to me. You matter to me. The confession hung between us. Alessandro, I know. He stepped back, giving me space. You need time to settle back in, to figure things out. I'm not pushing. I just needed you to know. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at nothing, my heart doing complicated things in my chest. 2 weeks later, I was reviewing vendor invoices when something caught my eye. Premium beverage supply, the wine distributor we used exclusively. The numbers were wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Just off. Like someone had added an extra zero to several line items. And the payment routing went through a business account I didn't recognize. I pulled up 3 months of invoices. The pattern was consistent. Payments inflated by 10 to 15%, routed through this mystery account. Then, apparently, returned to Vitale's main account with the correct amounts. My stomach dropped as understanding clicked into place. Money laundering, clean money going out, dirty money coming back, all disguised as legitimate business expenses. Using my restaurant, my beautiful, perfect, legitimate restaurant, as a washing machine for criminal proceeds. I sat frozen, the invoices spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. This was what Alessandro did. What I'd known he did, abstractly, in the part of his life separate from Vitale. Except it wasn't separate. It had never been separate. I was so stupid. My phone buzzed. Alessandro. Dinner tonight? There's something I want to discuss. My hands shook as I typed back. Yes, my office. 8 p.m. I had 7 hours to decide what to do with this information. 7 hours to choose between my integrity and a man I was absolutely, terrifyingly falling for. Alessandro arrived at exactly 8 p.m., carrying takeout from a Thai place we both loved, and wearing a soft smile that made him look younger. You've been working too hard, he said, setting containers on my desk. When's the last time you ate a real meal? This morning. Maybe. I couldn't return his smile. We need to talk. His expression shifted, reading my tone. What's wrong? I slid the invoices across the desk. He looked at them for a long moment, his face going carefully blank in that way that meant he was thinking fast. Sophia, don't. My voice was sharper than I intended. Don't insult me by pretending this is something else. I know what this is. He sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. What do you think it is? Money laundering, using premium beverage as a front to clean money through Vitale's accounts. I kept my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. You told me this place would be completely legitimate. You lied. I didn't lie. His voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. Vitale is legitimate. Every dollar we earn is clean. But yes, I'm using the vendor relationships to move other money through the system. The confirmation felt like a slap. You used me. The words came out smaller than I wanted. You brought me in, made me believe we were building something honest, and you were using me the whole time. No. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. I brought you in because I needed someone I could trust. Someone who would run this place with integrity. Someone who wouldn't compromise. And yet you compromised it. I stood up, needing distance. You turned my restaurant into part of your criminal empire. Your restaurant? His voice took on an edge. Sophia, I built this. I financed it. I own it. You manage it. The words landed like a punch. Right. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How could I forget? You're the boss. I'm just the employee who got ideas above her station. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I turned to face him. Explain to me how using my restaurant to launder money isn't betraying everything you said Vitale would be. He stood, and even across the office I could feel the intensity rolling off him. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm using vendor relationships here to move money, small amounts, carefully structured, nothing that would ever implicate you or Vitale directly. But the restaurant itself? Every reservation, every meal, every dollar we earn, completely clean. That's not the point. The point, he cut me off, his voice rising slightly, is that I live in a complicated world. I have obligations, responsibilities to people who depend on me. I can't just walk away from that because I want to build restaurants. Then you shouldn't have told me this was different. My voice cracked. You shouldn't have made me believe. Believe what? He moved closer. That I was trying to change? I am. That I wanted to build something legitimate with you? I do. That I care about you more than I should? Sophia, I. He stopped, jaw clenched, something burning in his eyes. You what? I whispered. We stared at each other across 3 feet of charged space. I should resign, I said finally. Find someone who doesn't mind being part of this. You're not resigning. His voice was flat. Final. You can't stop me. I can. Legally binding contract, remember? 6 months minimum. You have 3 left. The reminder of the contract felt like chains locking into place. So I'm trapped. You're committed. He gentled his tone slightly. And I'm asking you to trust me. The money moving through these accounts? It's mine. Money I've earned. Money I need to move discreetly for reasons that have nothing to do with Vitale's operations. But I'm not putting you at risk. I would never put you at risk. How can I believe that? Because I'm telling you the truth. Finally. Completely. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. You wanted transparency. This is it. Yes, I use some of Vitale's vendor relationships for other purposes. But the restaurant itself is clean. Your work is clean. And if anyone ever came asking questions, I have documentation that would protect you completely. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Sophia? He was close now, close enough that I could see the darker gray ring around his irises. Tell me what you need from me. I need you to be what you said you were. The words burst out. I need you to be the man who wants to build something different, something better. Not just another front for the same old criminal empire. I'm trying. Not hard enough? Then help me. His hands caught my shoulders, not roughly, but firm enough to make me still. You think this is easy? Trying to build legitimacy while managing obligations I can't just abandon? I need you, Sophia, to keep me honest, to remind me why any of this matters. His touch burned through my sweater. His eyes were molten silver, intense in a way that made breathing difficult. I can't be your conscience, I whispered. I can barely handle my own moral complexity. You're not my conscience. You're. He stopped himself, shook his head. I care about you. More than is smart. More than is safe. And I'm asking you to stay. To trust that I'm trying to do better. To believe that Vitale means what I said it meant. Alessandro, 3 more months. That's all I'm asking. Give me 3 more months to prove this can work. His hands were still on my shoulders. His face was so close I could count his eyelashes. I should step back. I should demand he let go. I should maintain the professional distance that had been eroding between us for months. Instead, I heard myself say, 3 months. But no more secrets. If there's anything else I should know, you tell me now. Something flickered in his expression. Guilt? Relief? Before he nodded. No more secrets. He agreed. He was lying. I knew he was lying. And I stayed anyway. The next 3 weeks were a special kind of torture. I threw myself into Vitale with obsessive focus, working 16-hour days, perfecting every detail until the restaurant hummed like a precision instrument. If I worked hard enough, I didn't have to think about the invoices hidden in my desk drawer, the evidence of Alessandro's deception, my own complicity in staying. He gave me space, stopping by less frequently, keeping our interactions professional, that charged tension between us banked, but never quite extinguished. Until the night everything changed. It was 11 p.m. on a Thursday. The last guests had left 20 minutes ago, and I was alone in my office reviewing next week's reservations when my door opened without a knock. Alessandro stood in the doorway, and something about him was wrong. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt was untucked, smudged with something dark at the collar. His tie hung loose around his neck. And his eyes, those ice-gray eyes that usually revealed nothing, looked haunted. Alessandro? I stood quickly. What happened? Are you hurt? No. His voice was rough. Can I come in? I nodded, already moving toward him. Whatever this was, it was bad. He closed the door behind him, locked it, then leaned against it like he needed the support. There was a problem tonight. He said it quietly, staring at the floor. With my other business. A shipment went wrong. Someone. He stopped, shook his head. People got hurt. My stomach dropped. How badly? Badly enough. He finally looked at me, and the rawness in his expression made my breath catch. I'm the one who gave the orders. I'm the one responsible. I'd known, abstractly, what he did. The violence implied in his world. But seeing it on his face, the weight of it, the guilt, made it brutally real. Why are you telling me this? I asked softly. Because you asked for honesty. His laugh was bitter. Because I needed. He stopped again, jaw clenched. I don't know why I came here. I should go. But he didn't move. We stood in silence, the space between us charged with something different than before. Not attraction, though that was still there. Something rawer, more desperate. Do you want to talk about it? I offered. No. Do you want me to tell you it's okay? I know it's not okay. He pushed off the door, started pacing. I know exactly what I am, Sophia. What I do. The blood on my hands even when I wash them clean. And I came here because. He stopped in front of me. Because when I'm here, I can pretend I'm someone different. Someone better. The confession hung between us. You are someone different here, I said quietly. The man who saved opening night with a joke. Who calls me every day to check on me. Who works 16-hour days because he cares about getting every detail right. That's not enough. His voice was almost a whisper. That doesn't balance what I do in the other part of my life. I know. So why are you still here? His eyes searched mine. Why didn't you run when you found those invoices? Why didn't you report me, or quit, or... Because I'm an idiot. I cut him off. Because despite everything I know about you, everything I should be terrified of, I stopped myself. You what? He stepped closer. I couldn't say it. Couldn't admit what had been growing inside me for months, taking root despite every logical reason to rip it out. I care about you, I finally whispered. God help me, Alessandro, I care about you. The air between us ignited. Sophia. My name was a warning and a plea. I know this is wrong. I know you're dangerous. I know everything about this situation should make me run. He kissed me. Or I kissed him. I wasn't sure who moved first, only that suddenly his mouth was on mine and his hands were in my hair and I was pressed against him like I could merge our bodies through sheer force of will. The kiss was desperate, almost violent in its intensity. Months of denial burning away in seconds, leaving only raw need. His hands moved to my waist, lifting me onto the desk, scattering reservation sheets. I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him closer, drowning in the taste of him, whiskey and danger and something uniquely Alessandro. Tell me to stop, he breathed against my mouth. Sophia, tell me to stop. Don't stop, I gasped. Don't you dare stop. His mouth moved to my neck, teeth grazing skin, and I arched into him with a sound I didn't recognize. His hands were everywhere, my back, my thighs, fumbling with the buttons of my blouse with shaking fingers. We shouldn't, he started. I don't care. I pulled his mouth back to mine. I don't care about should. I just want. A bang on the office door made us both freeze. Ms. Romano? Marcus's voice, apologetic but urgent. Sorry to interrupt, but there's an issue with tomorrow's reservation system. The whole thing crashed. Reality crashed back with it. Alessandro and I stared at each other, breathing hard, his hands still on my waist, my fingers still tangled in his hair. I. He stepped back first, running shaking hands through his disheveled hair. I should go. Alessandro! No. His voice was firm despite the tremor in it. This was. We can't. He couldn't finish a sentence. I need to go. He left without looking back, leaving me alone with swollen lips and a racing heart, and the terrifying realization that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. He didn't call the next day, or the day after that. For the first time in months, my phone stayed silent. No daily check-ins, no texts about Vitale, nothing. I told myself it was better this way, that almost sex on my office desk was a mistake we both needed to recover from. I told myself I was relieved. I was lying. By day 5, I was checking my phone obsessively. By day 7, I'd composed and deleted 24 texts. By day 10, I was seriously considering showing up at his penthouse just to confirm he was still alive. Then, Isabella showed up at Vitale with an envelope. From Alessandro, she said, her expression unreadable. He asked me to deliver it personally. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a legal document, a contract amendment. Effective immediately, Sofia Romano's role as general manager of Vitale is restructured as follows. Full partnership, 35% ownership, independent operating authority, complete operational control with no oversight requirements, current salary plus profit sharing, contract duration, indefinite, cancelable by either party with 30 days notice. At the bottom, in his bold handwriting, this is what you've earned, what you deserve. No strings, no obligations. The choice is entirely yours. A. I stared at the document, reading it 3 times, not quite believing what I was seeing. He was giving me Vitale. Real ownership. Real power. The ability to walk away whenever I wanted. He was setting me free. He left this morning, Isabella said quietly. For Italy. Said he had business that would take several weeks, possibly months. My heart clenched. He's running. He's protecting you. She sat across from my desk. Alessandro doesn't do this, Sofia. He doesn't give up control. He doesn't share ownership. And he certainly doesn't walk away from someone he cares about, unless he thinks it's the right thing to do. What am I supposed to do with this? That's the point. You're supposed to decide, without him here influencing you, without feeling obligated. She stood. He asked me to tell you something, he said. Tell her I understand if she never wants to see me again. Tell her I'm sorry. And tell her that she deserves better than what I can give her. After Isabella left, I sat alone in my office, holding a document that represented everything I'd worked for and everything I stood to lose. Partnership, freedom, security. All I had to do was sign it and let Alessandro walk out of my life. The smart choice was obvious. So why did it feel like choosing to amputate my own heart? I didn't sign it. Not that day, not that week. Not for 3 weeks, while Alessandro stayed in Italy, and Vitale thrived under my newly official management, and I lay awake every night thinking about ice-gray eyes and desperate kisses, and the weight of impossible choices. Lucia found me at 2 a.m. on a Friday, sitting in Vitale's empty dining room with a bottle of wine and Alessandro's unsigned contract. You're in love with him, she said. Not a question. That would be incredibly stupid. So that's a yes. She poured herself a glass. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. He's in Italy. I'm here. We both know this can't work. Why not? I laughed bitterly. Because he's a criminal, Lou. Because he launders money and gives orders that get people hurt and lives in a world I want no part of. And yet, you're miserable without him. That doesn't change what he is. No. She sipped her wine. But it changes what you are. Who you are when you're with him. I looked at her sharply. What does that mean? It means for the first time since James died, you're alive. Really alive. You wake up excited about work. You laugh. You care about things. Alessandro did that. James's death did that. Finally grieving. James's death happened 3 years ago, Soph. You've been grieving for 36 months. But you didn't start living again until Alessandro showed up with his stupid dollar tip and saw you. Really, saw you. The words hit harder than I expected. What if I sign the contract and he never comes back? I whispered. What if you don't sign it and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been? I signed the contract on a Tuesday morning and sent it to Alessandro's lawyer before I could change my mind. Then I went back to running Vitale, trying not to obsessively check my phone for a response that didn't come. He'd wanted me to have freedom. I was using it. That should be enough. It wasn't. 2 more weeks crawled by. Vitale's success continued. We'd been featured in Vogue, landed a spot on the Times' top 10 new restaurants, had a 3-month waiting list. Everything I'd worked for was happening. I'd never felt more empty. On a Thursday night, exactly 6 weeks after Alessandro left, I was closing out the register when the back door opened. My heart jumped. Ridiculous. Hopeful. But it wasn't him. It was Vincent, Alessandro's assistant, carrying a leather portfolio. Ms. Romano? He nodded respectfully. Mr. Gallo asked me to deliver this. Inside was a packet of documents, legal papers, financial statements, and a handwritten letter. I waited until Vincent left before opening it. Sophia. By now you've signed the partnership documents, or you haven't. Either way, you deserve to know the truth. All of it. My father, Domenico Gallo, built our family's business through violence and fear. He died when I was 19, leaving me with an empire held together by blood and betrayal. I was 20 when I took over. Too young, too soft, everyone said. They were wrong. I rebuilt everything he'd made, but bigger, smarter, less violent. I moved us into legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, imports. I paid off cops instead of killing them. I negotiated instead of declaring war. I tried to be better than he was. But blood doesn't wash off that easily. The money you found being laundered through Vitale? It wasn't from drugs or trafficking or anything like that. It was my own money, legitimate earnings from my legal businesses that I needed to move through offshore accounts to protect it from complications. Legal complications involving my father's old associates, who still think they have claim to what I built. I should have told you that immediately. I didn't because I'm so used to protecting information, protecting myself, that I forgot how to trust. Even you. Especially you. The night I came to your office, after the incident I mentioned, someone had tried to kill me. A car bomb, poorly executed, killed my driver instead. A good man. A father of 3. Dead because he was driving my car. I came to you because you're the only place I feel clean, the only person who makes me want to be better than what I am. And I almost destroyed that by touching you the way I've wanted to for months. You deserve someone without blood on his hands. Someone who doesn't wake up calculating odds of survival. Someone who can love you without worrying that proximity to him might get you killed. But I'm selfish enough to hope, despite everything I just wrote, that you might want me anyway. The choice is yours, Sophia. It's always been yours. Come to Italy, or don't. Either way, know that meeting you changed everything. Yours, if you'll have me. Alessandro. P.S. The other documents are full disclosure. Every business I own, every transaction, every connection. You wanted transparency. This is it. My hands shook as I read it twice, then 3 times. Then I booked a flight to Rome. The flight to Rome felt endless. 13 hours to second guess every decision, to reread Alessandro's letter until I had it memorized, to imagine 100 different ways this could end in disaster. I'd left Isabella in charge of Vitale with a hastily scribbled note, family emergency, back in a week. Not quite a lie. Alessandro had become something dangerously close to family in the 6 months I'd known him. The address he'd included led me to a villa in the Tuscan countryside, 2 hours from Rome. Rolling hills covered in vineyards, olive groves stretching toward mountains in the distance. The kind of beauty that belonged in paintings. The villa itself was old, centuries old, all honey-colored stone and terracotta tiles, surrounded by gardens that had clearly been tended for generations. A woman answered the door. 60s, silver hair, warm eyes that assessed me thoroughly. Sophia Romano? She asked in accented English. Yes, I'm looking for Alessandro. He's expecting you, this way. She led me through rooms filled with antique furniture and family portraits, out to a terrace overlooking the vineyards. And there, leaning against the stone railing with his back to me, was Alessandro. He'd changed. Thinner, maybe. His hair was longer, curling slightly at his collar. He wore jeans and a simple white t-shirt, sleeves pushed up to reveal forearms I'd memorized months ago. He looked younger, less guarded, more like the man he might have been if life had been kinder. Alessandro, I said softly. He turned, and the impact of seeing him again after 6 weeks stole my breath. Those ice-gray eyes widened with something like disbelief. You came. You asked me to. I gave you an out, I thought. He stopped himself. I thought you'd be smarter than this. Apparently, I'm an idiot. I moved closer. You offered me everything I wanted. Ownership, freedom, safety, and I got on a plane to chase after a man who launders money and has people trying to kill him. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. When you put it that way, it does sound foolish. Completely insane, I agreed. We stood 5 feet apart, the Tuscan sun warm on my shoulders, and I saw his hands flex at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from touching me. Did you read everything? He asked. All the documents? Every page? Your restaurant holdings? Your real estate investments? The offshore accounts? I took a breath. The connections to your father's old business that you've been systematically dismantling for the past 15 years. His jaw tightened. And? And I think you're trying, really trying, to be better than what you came from. I moved another step closer. I also think you're terrified that it's not enough, that the blood on your hands will never wash clean no matter how many legitimate businesses you build. Something cracked in his expression. Sophia, I read about your driver, Marco Santini. 3 kids, wife pregnant with their fourth. You set up a trust fund for the family, $2 million, full college tuition for every child, the wife's medical expenses covered for life. It doesn't bring him back. No. But it's what someone who only cares about power wouldn't do. I was close enough now to see the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. You're not your father, Alessandro. You don't know what I've done. Then tell me. I closed the final distance between us. Tell me the worst thing. Right now. I'm standing here, and I'm asking you to be honest with me. Completely honest. He stared at me for a long moment, conflict warring in his eyes. When I was 23, he finally said, his voice low and controlled, there was a man, Giuseppe Russo. He worked for my father, then for me. He was skimming. Not much, but enough that it couldn't be ignored. In my father's time, he would have been killed. Made an example. I stayed quiet, waiting. I gave him a choice. Leave New York. Never come back. Go start over somewhere else with his wife and daughter. Alessandro's hands clenched into fists. He refused. Said he'd worked too hard to be driven out by a boy playing at being boss. So I. He stopped, jaw working. What did you do? I had him beaten. Badly enough that he spent 2 months in the hospital. Badly enough that he needed surgery to walk again. And when he got out, I gave him the same choice. This time, he took it. The confession hung between us. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. I regret that I had to do it. His eyes met mine. I don't regret the outcome. He's alive. His family is safe. But I'm the reason he walks with a limp. I'm the one who gave the order to hurt him. To prove you weren't soft. To survive. In that world, at that age, I had to show I couldn't be pushed. That defying me had consequences. He turned away, looking out at the vineyards. You should leave, Sophia. Get on the next plane back to New York. Run Vitale and forget you ever met me. Instead, I touched his back. Just my palm between his shoulder blades, feeling the tension coiled there. He went absolutely still. I had a fiancé, I said quietly. James. We met in college. Got engaged my last year of med school. He was good. Genuinely good in a way that's rare. Kind, patient, believed the best of everyone. Alessandro didn't turn around, but I felt him listening. He was killed by a drunk driver 3 months before our wedding. The driver was 17. Rich family. Expensive lawyers. He got probation and community service. My hand moved in slow circles on Alessandro's back. For 2 years, I fantasized about killing him. The driver. About making him suffer the way James suffered. The way I was suffering. Sophia, I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that I'm not some innocent who doesn't know what darkness looks like. I've felt it. I've wanted violence and revenge and justice that had nothing to do with the law. I rested my forehead against his shoulder. I didn't act on it. But I understand the impulse, the necessity of surviving in a world that isn't fair. He turned in my arms. When had they become my arms around him? And his hands came up to frame my face with devastating gentleness. You're comparing grief to... I'm saying I understand moral complexity. I'm saying I see you, Alessandro. Not just the parts you want to show me. All of you. And I'm still here. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I saw something break in his eyes. Why? Because you're worth it. I met his gaze steadily. Because when I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I haven't since James died. Because you make me want to be braver, better, more than I thought I could be. I'm dangerous for you. You're dangerous, period. I'm making peace with that. His laugh was shaky. You're insane. Completely. I smiled. So are you going to kiss me? Or do I have to make the first move again? The question hung in the warm Tuscan air for one heartbeat. Two. Then his mouth was on mine, and the kiss was different from the desperate collision in my office. This was slower, deliberate, a claiming and a surrender all at once. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back to deepen the kiss. I pressed against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the rapid beat of his heart matching mine. Sophia, he breathed against my mouth. If we do this, if we cross this line, I won't be able to let you go. Good. I pulled him closer. Because I'm not planning to leave. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. Then he was lifting me, my legs wrapping around his waist as he carried me through the villa to a bedroom with afternoon sun slanting through gauze curtains. He set me down beside the bed, and we stood there for a moment, breathing hard, staring at each other. Last chance, he said roughly. Tell me to stop. Instead, I reached for the hem of my shirt and pulled it over my head. His sharp intake of breath was gratifying. Sophia. My name was reverent, awed. Then his hands were on my skin and I stopped thinking entirely. Later, much later, we lay tangled in sheets that smelled of lavender and sunlight, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him. That sounds ominous. The reason I came to Italy, it wasn't just to give you space. His free hand came up to tuck my hair behind my ear. There's a man here, Antonio Messina. He was my father's partner in the early days. He's been trying to take back territory he thinks belongs to him. My stomach tightened. That sounds dangerous. It is. But I've been negotiating with him, offering him a deal. I give him legitimate business interests, partnerships in some of my companies, in exchange for him leaving New York alone. Will he take it? I think so. He's old, tired of fighting. He wants to end his life respected, not constantly looking over his shoulder. Alessandro's thumb traced my lower lip. If this works, if I can make peace with the last of my father's generation, I can finally step back. Let other people run the day-to-day operations. Focus on the legitimate businesses. Hope flickered in my chest. You mean? I want a life, Sophia. Not just survival. A life with restaurants and wine and waking up next to someone I... He stopped himself. Someone you what? I prompted, my heart racing. Those ice-gray eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Someone I love. The word hung between us, huge and terrifying and perfect. Say that again, I whispered. I love you. He said it firmly, like he'd been holding it back for too long and the release was relief. I've been in love with you since you handed me back that dollar and looked at me like I was just another asshole customer, instead of someone to be feared. Tears pricked my eyes. You were an asshole customer. He laughed, pulling me closer. I was. I'm sorry. No, you're not. It got you what you wanted. Did it? His expression turned serious. What I want is you. Happy. Safe. Free to choose me because you want to, not because you're trapped or obligated or... I kissed him to shut him up. When we broke apart, I said against his mouth, I love you too. Against my better judgment and all common sense. I'm in love with you, Alessandro Gallo. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Stay, he said. Here. For the week you told Isabella. Let me show you Italy. Let me show you who I am when I'm not playing the part of a mob boss. Just a week? For now. Until I finish negotiations with Messina. Then. He brushed his lips across my forehead. Then we figure out what comes next. Together. Together? I agreed. And for the first time in 6 months, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt like possibility. The next week was something out of a dream. Alessandro showed me Tuscany, tiny villages perched on hillsides, vineyards where we tasted wine straight from the barrel, restaurants where nonnas fed us pasta and told embarrassing stories about young Alessandro. You were trouble even then, I teased after hearing about him stealing fruit from a neighbor's orchard. I was hungry. He grinned, younger and more carefree than I'd ever seen him. And the fruit was right there. We drove to Florence, where he walked me through the Uffizi Gallery like a professor, discussing Renaissance art with surprising knowledge. We ate gelato by the Ponte Vecchio. We made love in the afternoon while rain drummed on the villa's terracotta roof. He told me stories about his mother, dead since he was 15, who had loved gardens and opera and tried desperately to keep her son away from his father's business. She would have liked you, he said one evening as we sat on the terrace watching the sunset. You're stubborn like she was, principled, unwilling to compromise on what matters. What happened to her? Cancer. Fast and brutal. His hand tightened on mine. My father barely noticed. He was too busy with his empire. I think that's when I started hating what he'd built, seeing how it had consumed him so completely that he couldn't even mourn his own wife. I squeezed his hand, understanding the weight of that grief. On our fifth night, his phone rang at 2 a.m. I woke to find him on the terrace, speaking rapid Italian, his shoulders tense. When he came back to bed, his expression was grim. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Messina wants to meet. Tomorrow." He ran a hand through his hair. "He's ready to make a deal, but he wants to see me face to face. Alone." Fear spiked through me. That sounds like a trap. "Probably." He said it calmly. Too calmly. "But it's the only way to end this. If I don't go, we're back to territorial war. More. People get hurt. Alessandro, I'll be careful. I'm taking Vincent and two others. We're meeting in a public place. A restaurant in Rome. Lots of witnesses." He pulled me against him. "I'll be fine." I wanted to believe him. "Come back to me." I whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around me. "Always." He left at dawn. I spent the day unable to focus, pacing the villa's gardens, checking my phone obsessively. He texted at noon. "Meeting in progress." So far, so good. Nothing after that. By 8 p.m., I was seriously considering calling the police, the Italian police, to report what exactly? That my maybe boyfriend was meeting with another criminal and I was worried? At 9:47 p.m., headlights swept up the drive. I ran to the door, my heart in my throat. Alessandro got out of the car, and I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until it all came out in a rush. He was fine. Whole. Smiling. "It's done," he said, catching me as I threw myself at him. "Messina took the deal. It's over." I pulled back to search his face. "Really? Just like that?" "Just like that. He gets 30% ownership in three of my legitimate businesses: real estate, imports, a restaurant chain. In exchange, he leaves New York alone. Leaves me alone. We both get to retire from the family business." The weight of it hit me. "You're out?" "I'm out." He cupped my face, his thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "I'm done, Sophia. No more violence. No more looking over my shoulder. Just restaurants and wine and—" his smile was soft. "And you, if you'll have me." "You're really asking?" I laughed through my tears. "After everything? I'm really asking." I kissed him, pouring every ounce of relief and love and hope into it. When we broke apart, I whispered, "Yes. Obviously yes. You idiot." His laugh was joy and relief and promise all at once. That night, we made love like people who'd been given a second chance at life, slow and reverent and desperately grateful. And when I woke in the morning to find him watching me with those ice-gray eyes full of tenderness, I thought, this is it. This is the happy ending. I should have known better. We returned to New York 3 days later, and reality crashed back with a vengeance. Vitale was thriving. Isabella had handled everything perfectly, but the restaurant world was already buzzing with Alessandro's next project. "Brooklyn," he told me over coffee in my office. "Red Hook. A different concept. Casual Italian. Family style. Accessible pricing. Something for the neighborhood, not just Manhattan elite." His eyes were bright with enthusiasm, and I couldn't help but catch it. "Tell me more," I said. Over the next month, we planned Gallows, intentionally using his family name, reclaiming it for something good. A place where nonnas would feel at home, where families could afford Sunday dinner, where the food was honest and the atmosphere warm. It was beautiful in its simplicity. It was also a complete disaster. The problems started before we even opened. The contractor we'd hired, recommended by a trusted source, turned out to be cutting corners. Electrical work that wasn't up to code. Plumbing that would fail inspection. We lost 6 weeks and $200,000 fixing his mistakes. Then the chef Alessandro had been courting, a rising star known for authentic Italian cuisine, took a better offer in Los Angeles 2 weeks before opening. "We'll find someone else," I said, trying to stay positive. We did. Marco D'Angelo, talented but unproven, with a temper that made Andre look calm. The staff hiring was rushed, the training inadequate. And when we opened, finally, 3 months behind schedule, it showed. Opening night was chaos. Orders backed up in the kitchen, Marco screaming at line cooks in Italian, servers getting orders wrong. A family waited 90 minutes for pasta that arrived cold. I was everywhere at once, trying to control damage, but it was like plugging holes in a sinking ship. Alessandro stood at the host stand, his expression growing darker by the minute as he watched his dream crumble. By midnight, we'd served maybe 40% of our reservations. The rest had walked out. "We'll fix it," I told him as we surveyed the wreckage after closing. "Tomorrow we regroup. Retrain. Look at this." He gestured to the dining room with barely controlled fury. "This is a failure, Sophia. My failure. I rushed it, cut corners, didn't listen when you said we needed more time. We both made that decision. I pushed you." He turned to face me, and the defeat in his eyes was worse than his anger. I wanted so badly to prove I could build something good from my family name that I didn't do the work properly. And now look. The restaurant was empty except for cleaning crew. Through the windows, I could see the Brooklyn streets. Quiet, judgmental. "We'll try again tomorrow," I said firmly. But tomorrow was worse. A food critic from Brooklyn Magazine came on day 3. Her review was scathing. "Gallo's attempts to trade on Italian authenticity, but delivers tourist trap mediocrity. The Gallo name, once synonymous with power, is now just another Manhattan transplant colonizing Brooklyn with overpriced pasta." Reservations dried up overnight. By week 2, we were serving 20 diners a night. Marco quit, taking half the kitchen staff with him. The remaining staff were demoralized, sloppy. Alessandro threw himself into fixing it, hiring new chefs, retraining servers, adjusting the menu. But nothing worked. The restaurant had been poisoned by bad word of mouth. After 6 weeks, we were hemorrhaging $50,000 a week. "We need to close it," Isabella said during an emergency meeting. "Cut our losses. The brand damage is spreading. We're seeing cancellations at Vitale." Alessandro sat in silence, his expression carved from stone. "No," I said. "We can save this. We just need, we need to close it." Alessandro's voice was flat, final. "Isabella's right. Every day we stay open, we're damaging everything else we've built." The defeat in his eyes was devastating. We closed Gallo's on a Tuesday morning, 8 weeks after opening. The staff was let go with severance. The space was cleared. And Alessandro disappeared into himself. He still came to Vitale, still handled business, but the light that had burned in him during our week in Italy was extinguished. He was professional, efficient, and utterly closed off. "Give him time," Isabella advised. "This is the first real failure he's had in years. He doesn't know how to process it." But watching him withdraw was agony. He stopped coming to my apartment, stopped the late-night phone calls. When I touched him, he didn't pull away, but he didn't respond either. It was like loving a statue. "Talk to me," I begged one night after a particularly silent dinner. "Please, Alessandro, don't shut me out." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. I failed." The words burst out of him with startling violence. I had one chance to prove I could build something good with my family name, and I destroyed it. Everyone was right. The Gallo name is poison. Everything I touch turns to. Stop. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. One failure doesn't erase everything you've built. Vitale is thriving. Your other restaurants are successful. You made peace with Messina. You're out of the criminal business. Those are victories. Built on blood money. Built on your intelligence and hard work and determination to be better than your father. I didn't let him look away. "You think I don't know what failure feels like?" I dropped out of medical school. I couldn't save James. I spent 3 years sleepwalking through life. But you don't get to use this as an excuse to go back into your shell. His hands came up to circle my wrists, but he didn't pull away. I don't know how to be someone who fails. Then learn. With me. Together. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, slowly, he pulled me into his arms and held on like I was the only thing keeping him anchored. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm sorry I shut you out. Don't do it again. I held him just as tightly. We're partners, remember? That means you don't get to suffer alone. His arms tightened. Partners. In everything. Recovery was slow. Alessandro threw himself into analyzing what went wrong with Gallows, not to wallow, but to learn. We spent hours dissecting every decision, every shortcut, every assumption. We rushed the staffing, I said, reviewing our hiring timeline. I rushed the staffing, he corrected. You wanted another month. I overruled you. We made the decision together. Sophia. He looked up from his notes. You can be generous, but we both know I pushed too hard. My ego was invested in opening quickly. The admission was progress. We documented everything. What failed, why it failed, what we'd do differently. It became a blueprint, a lesson learned in blood and money. If we try again, Alessandro said one evening, we do it right. Proper timeline, no shortcuts. Listening to both of us equally. If? I raised an eyebrow. A ghost of his old smile appeared. When? When we try again. Slowly, the man I loved came back. Not all at once, but in moments. A laugh at something I said, his hand finding mine under the table, the return of those late-night phone calls where we talked about everything and nothing. 3 months after closing Gallows, he showed up at my apartment at midnight with takeout and an expression I couldn't read. I have something to show you, he said. He pulled out architectural plans. A new restaurant. Not in Brooklyn this time, in Queens. Smaller, more focused, with a timeline that stretched 18 months instead of 6. Gallows, version 2, he said. But only if you're my full partner. Equal say in every decision. No rushing, no ego. Just us building something right. I looked at the plans, then at him. You're sure? I'm sure that I don't want to do any of this without you. His hand covered mine on the table. I'm sure that failure taught me more than a dozen successes. And I'm sure that having you beside me makes me braver than I've ever been alone. I kissed him, tasting possibility and hope, and the courage to try again. Partners, I agreed. In everything, he echoed. 18 months later, I stood in the kitchen of Gallows 2.0 and watched controlled chaos transform into art. The restaurant wasn't large, 60 seats, intimate, warm, but every detail was perfect. We'd taken our time, learned from our mistakes, built something that honored Alessandro's heritage without being crushed by it. Opening night was 3 hours away. You're pacing, Alessandro observed from where he leaned against the counter, relaxed in a way that still sometimes surprised me. I'm not pacing, I'm strategically moving. He grinned. Sophia, we've got this. And we did. The opening was everything Brooklyn had been not. Smooth service, exceptional food, an atmosphere that made people linger over wine and conversation. The reviews were glowing, the reservations solid. But more than that, it felt right. This was what we'd been building toward. Not just a successful restaurant, but proof that second chances were possible. That failure could teach. That the Gallo name could mean something good. Over the following months, our empire grew. Not an empire built on fear and violence like Alessandro's father had commanded. An empire of restaurants. Each one different. Each one excellent. Vitale remained our flagship. Elegant, exclusive, perfect. Gallows became our heart. Warm, welcoming, family. We opened a third, Cortila, in the West Village, then a fourth, Luna, in the Upper East Side. Alessandro stepped back from his remaining questionable business interests, selling them off to people who'd run them without his involvement. He kept the legitimate operations, pouring everything into building something that would last. We weren't just partners in business anymore. My toothbrush lived at his penthouse. His clothes hung in my closet. We fought about menu changes and made love on his desk and fell asleep tangled together discussing expansion plans. Lucia called it disgustingly domestic. I called it happiness. 2 years after the night he left me a $1 tip, Alessandro asked me to marry him. Not with a grand gesture or public declaration. Just the two of us in the empty Vitale dining room at 2 a.m., exhausted after a long service, sharing a bottle of wine. Marry me. I nearly choked on my wine. What? Marry me. He set down his glass with deliberate care. I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to ask first. Make sure you'd say yes before I bought something you'd have to wear forever. That's very practical. Sophia. His hand covered mine. I love you. I want to build a life with you. Not just businesses, but an actual life. Marriage. Maybe kids someday if you want them. Growing old together, arguing about whether our restaurants need refreshing. Tears pricked my eyes. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You made me want to be better. You made me believe I could be better. I don't want to do any of this. Life, restaurants, anything without you. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The dollar tip, the money laundering, the almost kiss, the failure and recovery. Every moment that had tested us and proven we were stronger together. Yes, I said. Obviously, yes. His smile was sunrise and triumph and pure joy. The ring he eventually chose was perfect. A simple solitaire diamond that caught light without screaming for attention. Elegant, understated, very us. We got married 6 months later in Tuscany, at the villa where we'd first said, I love you. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Lucia cried through the entire thing. Marco made a speech about how I'd tamed the beast. Isabella looked proud. And Alessandro. Alessandro looked at me like I was his entire world. 5 years after that first night at Marcello's, I woke up in our penthouse to find Alessandro already awake, watching me with those ice-gray eyes. What? I murmured, still half asleep. Just thinking. About? About how my life changed because I left a $1 tip. His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder. Best investment I ever made. I swatted him. You're an idiot. You're idiot. He pulled me closer. Forever. Forever. I agreed. Outside our windows, Manhattan was waking up. Down in the meatpacking district, Vitale was being prepped for lunch service. In Queens, Gallo's staff was arriving for their shift. Across the city, our restaurants hummed with life. Places we'd built together, brick by brick, compromise by compromise, an empire built on second chances, on a woman brave enough to return a dollar, and a man brave enough to change. Come on, Alessandro said, kissing my forehead. We have that meeting with the real estate agent, remember? The property in Dumbo? Another restaurant? I groaned. We have 8 already. 7. He grinned. And this one would be special. Right on the water. Views of Manhattan. I'm thinking, upscale seafood? I looked at him. This man who'd once terrified me, who now made my coffee exactly right and remembered my Nonna's birthday, and argued passionately about whether our wine list needed more Italian vintages. Fine, I said, but I get final say on the chef. Deal. His kiss was soft, familiar, perfect. Partners? In everything. And we were. Epilogo. Come home to me, 10 years later. I stood in the kitchen of our home in Westchester. We'd moved out of the penthouse 3 years ago when our daughter was born, and watched Alessandro attempt to braid Julia's hair. Papa, you're pulling. Our 7-year-old squirmed in her chair. I'm being gentle. You're terrible at this, I interrupted, taking over. Go check on Marco. Our 5-year-old son was, predictably, covered in flour from helping make bread. How did you get it on your ears? Alessandro asked, exasperated but laughing. Magic, Marco announced proudly. This was our life now. Restaurants and quarterly reviews and staff meetings. Yes. But also school pickups and soccer practice and Sunday dinners where 3 generations gathered around our table. Nonna had recovered more than doctors predicted. She lived in a cottage on our property now, spending her days in the garden, teaching Julia Italian, scolding Alessandro for spoiling the children. They need discipline, she'd say in her thick accent. They need gelato, Alessandro would counter, already reaching for his wallet. We'd grown our restaurant empire to 12 locations. Isabella had become CEO, freeing us to focus on family while still remaining involved in what we'd built. Vitale had 3 Michelin stars now. Gallows had expanded to 3 locations. We'd opened a cooking school in Alessandro's name, teaching underprivileged kids culinary arts. The Gallo name meant something good now. That evening, after the kids were in bed and Nonna was settled in her cottage, Alessandro found me on our back porch, watching the stars. Penny for your thoughts? He handed me a glass of wine. Just thinking about how far we've come. I leaned into him. You remember that first night? When you left me that dollar? How could I forget? His arm came around my shoulders. You looked at me like I was the biggest asshole you'd ever met. You were. Fair. He kissed the top of my head. But you still gave me a chance. Several chances, I corrected. Many, many chances. And I'm grateful for everyone. His hand found mine, thumb brushing over my wedding ring. You know what I realized today? What? I spent 20 years trying to escape my father's shadow, trying to prove I was different, better. But I was still defining myself in opposition to him. He turned to face me. You taught me that I don't have to be the opposite of my father. I can just be me, Alessandro, husband, father, restaurant owner, imperfect but trying. Tears stung my eyes. You're more than trying. You're succeeding. We're succeeding, he corrected. Everything I am, everything we've built. It's because you didn't let me hide. You demanded I be better. And then you loved me when I failed. Of course I did. I touched his face. This man I'd chosen again and again. That's what partners do. In everything, he murmured, echoing our old promise. From inside, I heard Julia calling. Nightmare, probably. She'd been having them lately. I'll go, Alessandro said, but I was already standing. We'll both go. We found our daughter sitting up in bed, tears on her cheeks, clutching the stuffed lion Alessandro had bought her in Italy. Mama, Papa, I dreamed you left and didn't come back. Never, Alessandro said firmly, gathering her into his arms. We will always come back. Always. Promise? Promise. He looked at me over her head, and I saw everything in his eyes. The journey we'd taken, the empire we'd built, the life we'd created. Love. Pure and simple and hard won. I climbed into bed beside them, and Marco appeared moments later, somehow sensing the family gathering. We ended up all 4 of us tangled together. Alessandro, me, and our children, in a pile of blankets and love and safety. Tell us the story, Julia demanded, about the dollar. It had become family legend, the night Mom and Papa met. Your mother was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, Alessandro began, winking at me. And I was an arrogant fool. Papa's always a fool, Marco interrupted. True, I agreed, laughing. Alessandro continued the story, our story, as our children listened with wide eyes. He left out the dangerous parts, the criminal empire, the money laundering. Those would come later, when they were old enough to understand complexity. For now, it was just a love story about a man who left an insult, and a woman who returned it with dignity, and how that moment changed everything. Later, after the kids finally fell asleep and we'd retreated to our own bed, Alessandro pulled me close. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Saying yes to me? To all of this? I thought about the question seriously, about the complications, the fears, the moments when loving him had been terrifying. Not once, I said firmly, not a single day. His kiss was soft, familiar, still capable of making my heart race after a decade together. I love you, Sophia Gallo. I love you too. I settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Even when you're terrible at braiding hair. His laugh rumbled through both of us. Outside, Manhattan glittered in the distance. Our restaurants were closing for the night. Staff cleaning, reviewing, preparing for tomorrow. The empire we'd built together, brick by brick, compromise by compromise. But here, in this bed, in this house, with our children sleeping down the hall and our whole life stretched out before us. This was the real empire. This was everything. And it had all started with a $1 tip and the courage to demand better. From him, from myself, from the life we chose to build together. Come home to me, I whispered, an old promise between us. Always, he answered, in everything.